Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, I've been watching a few older movies that I haven't seen in quite some time, and this one came across and I watched it. It's called Orca, the Killer Whale. Now, last time I saw the movie Orca, I was rather young. I hadn't seen it in quite some time. And this is about a revenge tale, absolute and complete, where a fisherman or a captain played by Richard Harris, much younger Richard Harris in this film. Um, he is an Irish fisherman who wanted to pay off the mortgage of his boat, and in order to do so, he was going to catch an orca to send up to an aquarium for entertainment, like Shamu. Well, he was going for a male, but he misses the male, nicking its fin, and ends up hitting the female. Well, the female, it turns out, was also pregnant, and it didn't survive, and due to the stress brought on by him trying to bring the female up, it aborts its fetus right on the deck of the ship. And you see the male who is watching this whole thing roaring out and screeching out in anger and pain because its mate has been killed and it lost its child. Any animal would feel sorrow for the loss of its child. And it watches as the fisherman, Nolan, uses a fire hose to splash this fetus off his ship because of how disturbing it looks, how ugly it looks. The writing in this film is rather messy in some ways. The cutting is very much 70s. I've been watching earlier movies like The Exorcist, which I did a mystery review on. Also, The Orca here. You see some very uneven cuts with certain scenes. You have characters that are rather warning, but then kind of say enough is enough. Because basically the premise is that this orca, the male orca, wreaks havoc on a fishing community, specifically against Richard Harris's character, until he will agree to fight it. And then he takes it sinks other people's boats. It drives the fish out of the bay area, out of the port, so people can't make a living. And it's a mob mentality starting to build up against Richard Harris's character. Now, Charlotte Rampling, who I've seen in a few other movies, Basic Instinct 2 and Assassin's Creed, and a few other movies, I'm pretty sure, plays an educator on whales, specifically orcas. She's actually she actually gives a narration throughout the film of, essentially, it's like she's giving a debrief or writing a novel. And Richard Harris, his acting in this is very well done. So is Charlotte Rampling's. Now, you think there would be some sort of romantic case here, but there really isn't. I mean, it's just a basic for survival that you see anything. There's no real sexuality in this, except for one scene, which is actually Bo Derek and another guy who was a friend of, or part of the crew. Now, the kills in this movie, it's 70s. You're gonna have monster kills where you're pulling a guy down, or they use puppets for, like, there's Great White scene where Great White is about to attack somebody, but the orca comes in and smashes a puppet of a great white, and then they use footage of a damaged great white to sell how damaged this shark got from just merely getting smashed by the great white, or by the orca. Now, objectively, this movie is pure 70s. It doesn't hold up. Uh, you see this, they use the same footage of the orca jumping out, turning, and going back in over and over and over. It's a digital loop kind of thing that they show how in many different scenes it's the same orca that does the jumps. They use, or you see that there's an orca with a curved dorsal, much like in the Free Willy movies, but also it's the same orca that, or and suggested that it's the same orca, but it doesn't have the curved dorsal. They take it, or they go high or very high up north to fight this thing, and characters who were once kind and supportive end up turning on the guy, and it's like, really? Really? Now, this movie ends essentially with the orca getting revenge and then just swimming off. They don't make the beast who was wronged into the party of the monster, you know? The orca was simply acting out of vengeance in this case. Now, animals or mammals, they do have brain functions. They can understand things. Looking at orcas, they are essentially giant dolphins, which I believe was amended later on. They're not really whales. They are essentially dolphins. Very aggressive dolphins. But these things, when you see, they don't hold back with the gore. They show a woman getting her freaking leg bitten off by this orca. This orca collapses a stilted house, or that's stilted over the water, so that it will piss off the guy that killed its mate and child, essentially. And it also causes a freaking massive fire that goes up to the fuel, or the fuel stations, sinks ships. It's doing all sorts of stuff to get this guy to fight him, until he finally goes nuts and finally saying, yes, I'll fight you, you son of a bitch, revenge fish, or whatever. It's just that he goes, the wonderful thing about Richard Harrison in this movie is that he is remorseful of what he did. At first, he was extremely remorseful, but essentially this whale wants its pound of flesh. And the writing, in that sense, is pretty intriguing. It shows that this whale wants what is owed to him, essentially. An eye for an eye, in this case. Now, when it comes to the realistic nature of it, well, movies aren't supposed to be realistic. This is a revenge story through and through of a whale, or of a creature that was wronged, and it wreaks havoc in order to get its vengeance. And in this case, it gets its vengeance and then swims off, never to be seen again. Charlotte Rampling's character Rachel, and her narration is very well done, because you hear her narration throughout the film. I really do like that small aspect, because it's kind of like, this is what happened, and what happened is quite unbelievable. And let me tell you, folks, when I say it's kind of unbelievable, it really is unbelievable. This whale seems to understand fuel pipes and all sorts of things. It's sort of like Jaws Unleashed, the video game, where you could do all sorts of things as a shark. And it really is kind of nuts, you know? So, when this movie is essentially kind of like, well, we could see how great whites do things in Jaws. Let's show what an actual smart whale can do if it was wronged. And when you see this whale swimming up and then jump and open its mouth, those shots, those aren't sped up, I don't believe. Now, they could possibly be, but these things can get pretty friggin' fast, you know. I mean, I've seen how fast real orcas can swim, and these things are pretty amazing. You do see the normal objective flaws in this film. How there's clearly puppets, how there's clearly repeat shots for certain scenes, how there's repeat frames and whatnot. Writing, however, is a decent story. This is a nice little story that is told. It's meant for horror aspects. This is definitely one that could be constituted as a horror. You had a great cast that played this movie very well. Some of the acting is a little off, but overall, objectively, I would put this movie at about a 7. Its writing and whatnot is done very well for the 70s. If this movie was made today, it would be god awful. The quality, that is. However, if they ever did do a story about, or I don't think that they would do a story about an orca nowadays where an orca is terrorizing people. Let's just say that society wouldn't allow it. But as for this movie, I do like the complexity of the characters. The animal or the orca wreaking havoc in order to get what it wants, which is its pound of flesh, is very well done. The gore aspect of this movie is up there, so it works. I do like this story and how it plays. Now, like I said, objectively, it's more of a 7 out of 10. There are extreme issues with it. However, given the limitations of what people could do at some time or back in the 70s, really does show through on this. However, subjectively, I'd put this movie at about an 8 to 9 out of 10 because I really like the story. It shows a remorseful person, this character who was just trying to make a living but ends up doing something wrong. He's remorseful about it. And that is, or he's not that stereotypical fisherman that's like, I'll kill anything and whatnot, when the whole mindset back then was indeed that kind of way. A good shark is a dead shark, or a good fish is a dead fish, and yada, yada, yada. In this case, this is not the case. Or he was very remorseful. He didn't, or he felt that he had done wrong, but he didn't know how to make it right, and till the orca basically or essentially challenging him and harming him and everybody around him in order to get him. It's like, you're going to fight me or I'm going to keep doing all this stuff to you. That's essentially what the orca's message was. And I really do like how this film flushes out the story a little bit more. And the climax is rather iffy. Obviously, Richard Harris's character is killed by the orca. It's not so much, or is kind of like an Ahab thing, except that the whale lives. Moby Dick didn't, I don't think. But yes, this movie is pretty solid for a 70s horror flick. I really like it subjectively. Moviegoer, 70s horror flick, it's up there. It's entertaining. It really does give you that nice 70s vibe. So I'll put it up at a 9 out of 10. There may be some people that aren't really turned on by horror back in the 70s because of how cheesy it could be. But yeah, this movie is a solid movie in my opinion. I haven't seen it in many, many years, but revisiting it, I've forgotten a lot of it. So yeah, I really like this movie. I do recommend people give it a look. It really is a movie that is worth watching. Anyway, folks, that's my review. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to like the video, comment on it. What did you think of this movie if you've seen it? If you haven't, I highly recommend you give it a shot. And also share the stream, or share the video out, not the stream, the video. It helps get the channel noticed, and likes do as well. This has been Orange Hat Reviews. Have a wonderful day, and always remember to stay humble.